Okay, so we have selected our task. We've anticipated what our kids are going to do. So that's the planning portion. Now we are in the classroom, right? And we've put up this problem. It's either on our smartboard, if we've kicked it out to the students. And so now, as our students are working, we want to start to monitor them. So the kids are working on the problem. I'm going to move around the classroom and kind of see, okay, what strategy are they using? It's interesting to really see what kids are up to when they're solving these types of problems. So we've selected our problem. It's on the smartboard. We anticipated what they're doing, and now we're going to monitor them. So what I'd like to do now is just give you some different things within Smart Learning Suite that are going to allow you to monitor your students. So we saw earlier how we did a shout it out. You guys were solving that weird abstract problem with the tic-tac-toe, and everyone was kind of able to shout out their solutions. And so if I was monitoring how you were doing with that problem, that could be a great way to do it. And remember, you can make it identified, you can make it anonymous. If you've got it on your smartboard, you could have that shout it out running in the background, and you can go ahead to another page in your file, and the kids can still contribute, but they won't see those answers popping up on the screen. They're just kind of popping up in the background. I can return to it when I want to, or I can throw up a screen shade, another tool within Smart Learning, Smart Notebook that hides everything that's in the background, and I can kind of reveal that whenever I'm ready. The image that you're seeing here on this page 30 is actually from a blog that I found. If I don't know if you're able to see that URL that's down there, but the end of it says, "Shout it out, Smart Lab is cool." So I love that. So this teacher has his blog, and he was talking about how he uses Shout It Out in the classroom. So I added that resource for you guys so you can check out some more ideas once you're able to download that file. So we did the shout it out earlier. Another opportunity to monitor is called Response To. Response To is another one of our smart labs. It's great for doing any type of formative or summative assessment during the class. I can build little mini assessments with a multiple answer type item, multiple choice, a poll, opinion, or a short answer. And when the students finish, you get a detailed report of the answers that they gave. So you actually get an item analysis of what everyone was up to. So this is a great way to monitor your students whenever they're solving those initial problems. So I wanted to give you that student experience now. So I built a response to. In this example, just for the sake of our webinar, I just kept it one question. So I'm going to put that up right now. It's going to, just like the shout it out did, it's going to take over your screen, and you're going to be able to contribute a response to it. And we'll just do this real quickly so we can get on to some other applications, but I wanted you to at least have a chance to see what this would look like as a student. So I'm starting the activity, and you should start to see it overtake your screen here. And at the same time, I can see the percent of you that have answered the question. I can see kind of live results. So
Michael, when you're doing
so right now I can see that 12% of people have answered the question, and of course it's going to take a little while. This is kind of a, one of those where you kind of explain a little bit. So we'll give you another minute there, and then we'll show the results.
So Michael, when we use monitoring or response, I know it can often be looked at just making sure that every student is paying attention and doing their work. But do you notice that there's other ways in which response can be used or monitoring can be used, just to notice, how students are interacting with the material or their level of understanding?
Perfect. Okay, we're just going to move forward from that activity, but essentially, once you get the results and your students have contributed their responses to the response to, you're able to see those. You can review it if you want to project your questions up onto the screen. And again, you get a report that you're able to export out to an Excel spreadsheet to get all of their results attached to the students, which is really awesome. So we've gone through the process of planning our lesson. We started to monitor them. And then this is where the real discussion comes in. We're going to select and sequence and connect the different strategies for our students. So I want to give you some ideas for how we can do that in the classroom as well. So one of the things you want to think about, and I'm on page 34 out there now, is the way that you're questioning with your students. So one of the things it talks about in the 5 practices is we want to try to reduce what they call IRE exchanges. This is where a teacher asks a question, the student answers, and then the teacher lets the student know if they're right or wrong, right? So some call it ping ponging, teacher, student. And we want to try to increase the student to student exchanges. So if you can imagine, I've selected and sequenced my students, they're going to start sharing their strategies, and the students can ask them questions, and that student can ask this other students questions. So we get more of a true natural discourse between our students. And that can be a little bit hard at first if our kids don't really know what to ask. So question stems can be a great way of kind of initiating this process until our students get accustomed to it. So on 35, I've added some of these question stems. And then I also have a link to 100 question stems. Those were developed by Professor Gladys Kersant at University of Connecticut, who I've had the opportunity of working with before. So again, Smart Notebook at the end, you'll be able to download this. You'll have a link to those 100 question stems to help your students get engaged. So another strategy for having those students share out their solutions that's really exciting and fun for our kids is a screen share. So if you have a smartboard that has IQ, then you have these little apps at the bottom of your screen on your smartboard, and one of those is a screen share. It's device agnostic. You can use AirPlay, you can use Chromecast, you can use Miracast, whatever device you have is going to work through the screen share. But you can display student work from anywhere in the classroom. So my idea is you take a smartphone or a tablet and you put it on camera mode, and you screen share that up to the smartboard at the front of the room, and now I can show the students work from where they're seated. So if I got a student working with a million little manipulatives, I don't have to ask them to bring all those up to the document camera and try to organize them up there. I can literally go to the student's desk and show what they're working on, and that kid is broadcasted up to the screen. I can even write over top of that image if I want to. So if we look at page 37, we can imagine that we're in the classroom and we have this handsome little gentleman here. He's working on his math problem. He's working with his pattern blocks, and he says that his hexagon is 6/15 of his shape. So I want you guys, participants, imagine that you're a student in this classroom. What might you ask this guy about, his what he shared with you? He says his hexagon is 6/15 of his shape. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at that image and think of what you might ask him, and then we'll briefly go into another shout it out. I'm going to ask you guys to shout out your questions. What we're trying to kind of display for you here is student to student questioning. So we can use a shout it out not only to get the kids to respond to us, but the students to respond to one another. So they can ask the student a question, they can give them a comment like, hey, great job, or that's what I just came up with as well, sort of thing like that. All right. So on 38, I'm going to start to shout it out. Again, this is going to take over your Smart Learning Suite online, for lack of a better term. And you'll have an opportunity to share out your questions for our little guy up there that was working with his pattern blocks so awesomely. Okay, good, awesome. All right, so I'm seeing responses. I've got, how did you get that answer? I got a compliment over here, just nice, good job, bud. It's good, encourage each other. How do you know? How do you know that that's whatever the fraction was that I do not even remember right now, 6/15, I think? How'd you work that out? How'd you determine the fraction size? Are you confident in your answer? How did you get your denominator? Where did the 15 come from, right? That's a great question. What shape did you break them into to kind of get the basis of that? How do you know it's 6/15? Perfect. You guys are doing awesome with this. Fantastic responses. So you can imagine that this student could be up there at the smartboard, they could select these questions, and then they could describe to the class, and they can have this real authentic engagement with one another. Cool. All right, I'm gonna move it on to my next slide. Great job, everybody participating. Fantastic responses. So another opportunity that I have also in the IQ, if your smartboard has IQ, is whiteboarding. So as I'm moving through a unit in math, or if I'm even just doing within one lesson, I want to kind of take notes on my whiteboard or draw some images, that sort of thing. I can start to make these connections from one concept to another on the whiteboard. And if you've got the IQ module, it's going to save those images. It's going to save those notes and those drawings that you have. So day after day, as I build up these strategies, like maybe I'm doing multiplication. We started with repeated addition, and now we're going to move towards making equal groups, and now we're going to go to arrays or an area model, those sorts of things. Then I can sort of track that and create this anchor chart throughout the process and just keep accessing it and adding more to it and making those connections for our students. The alternative, if you don't have IQ, just build a separate notebook page for each one of those steps, and kind of we can go back and see where we came from. So we've gone through this process, we've done everything that we need to do. So right now I've kind of conducted this formative assessment of my class, right? I have a pretty good sense of what each of my students' needs are through this discourse that we've had. And now I can kind of differentiate for my students. So if we think about SLSO, there's one more fantastic feature that I want to share with you guys today before we wrap it up that you can do in Smart Learning Suite online. So there's an opportunity when you're building the file in Smart Notebook to link an object. So I've added these different shapes here, and I'm able to link within my page. So if you were a student in my class, I might say, okay, you're going to be in the yellow circle group, and you're going to be in the blue square group. So all of you out there that are in the lesson right now, you can actually select any one of those shapes, and it's going to take you to an activity. So I made it connect to a smart lab so that my students could practice through gaming, right? So this wasn't possible before within Smart Learning Suite. You couldn't have different students working in different labs at the same time and starting it when they want to, sort of a thing, and then accessing the different parts of the lesson. Maybe I need to go back and revisit something from earlier in the lesson to give myself a reminder. And that's the beauty of Smart Learning Suite online. So go ahead, yeah, if you want to select one of those images, it'll take you to one of those smart labs. And then whenever you are ready, you can head over to page 45, where I'm going to kind of wrap things up with a quote from Piaget. We talked about how he was kind of behind that CRA methodology too, along with Bruner. And this quote from Piaget says, "I engage my subjects in conversation, patterned after psychiatric questioning, with the aim of discovering something about their reasoning underlying their right, but especially their wrong answers," right? That reminds us of that growth mindset, that we can learn so much from right answers, but a lot of times we can learn even more from those wrong answers. So having these kids come out and just kind of explore these problems and just go for it and see what they come up with and how far they get. And they may not even solve the whole problem, but maybe whatever route they started to take leads you somewhere. And we can start talking about that and building that knowledge in our students and make those connections. So with that, I'd like to challenge you to put these practices into action. Remember that CRA approach. Sometimes we get stuck in the abstract as teachers because we're accustomed to it. We speak that language, but we need to draw it back so our kids can build their way up. And then in terms of the 5 practices and different strategies I showed you today, just start small. Try one thing, maybe each week, and you can build upon that. Remember, you're going to have the notebook file. It's going to have those how-tos in there. It's going to have the whole entire every page that we looked at today, along with the attachments, tutorials, those sorts of things. And then finally, try out Smart Learning Suite online. Give it a go in your classroom. See what it can do for differentiation, personalized learning, and how it can really keep you from getting you untethered from that smartboard. And as you have your successes, tweet them out. #SmartChampion. We can continue this mathematical discourse that we started today online. So I look forward to seeing those tweets. I wish you luck in this process. Hopefully you came away today with something that you can really use in the classroom and enjoy with your students. So happy teaching.